Assalamu alaikum. How are you doing today? I thought in this video I'd talk a bit about apartheid. I'm from South Africa, as you all know by now, and in 1961, in May of 1961, apartheid was put on the legislature and it became law, together with a number of acts. Um, but before I go there, let me just tell you that May 1961 was the month that apartheid was born, and it's also the month that I was born, and the year that I was born. So I'm turning 62 this year. So if apartheid had still been alive, it would have turned 62 this year. That's just FYI. In 1994, 33 years later, the ANC took over in a democratic election. And so apartheid and rule by the Afrikaners only lasted 33 years. Of course, they were around before then, but South Africa was a British colony before then. And ironically, the Afrikaners took over independence from the British here in the southern tip of Africa. But that's only because they were the only ones really who could take over. The history of South Africa is, in a nutshell, um, the British came here. Well, actually, the Afrikaners came here first. They came here in 1652. They came to build a castle here. They brought us with them, us being people of Malay origin. Malaysia, Indonesia, and Java at the time was a Dutch colony. So the Dutch or Afrikaners brought us here. And we came here we were enslaved as builders and clothing workers, tailors, dressmakers, and so on. That was about 350 years ago or so. The British settled here in 1820 and they brought Indians with them to work on the sugarcane fields. They settled in Natal and eventually a lot of them moved up to Johannesburg. And then, of course, there are the black people. Now, I remember in 94 when the elections took place, there were, roughly speaking, there were 5 million white people, of which about 3 million were Afrikaners and 2 million were mostly English speaking, couple of Portuguese, very few Chinese, and sprinkling of Germans. There were about 3 million colored people, and according to the Group Areas Act only, we, because of our skin color, as you can see, we were classified colored, although my ID book said I'm Malay, and I've never considered myself to be colored. But we lived in colored areas because there was no Malay area. And there was about 1 million Indians in the country, and that left about some in the region of 30 million black people of different tribes and languages and so on, but all black African people who lived here or even to the north of South Africa, but they moved down all the way to the southern tip here in Cape Town where we live. And what the Afrikaner government did was they declared colored people in the Western Cape and Indian people in Natal and Johannesburg as preferential race groups. In other words, what that meant was they preferred those races above black people and they excluded black people. Black people couldn't come into the cities, they couldn't get jobs. But they put aside certain jobs for Indians and coloreds, like teaching and nursing, police and traffic cops. And it was actually called the Job Reservation Act, where they reserved jobs for white people. And people of color, or non whites as they were referred to, could only do those jobs. And they couldn't be promoted to senior positions because obviously white people were also doing those jobs, and you couldn't have that situation where a white person was subordinate to a person of color. That's blasphemous. And by the way, the Afrikaners were a Christian, very religious Christian people. And they had a strong affiliation with their church. And they actually made a church for colored people, a separate church. So you had the Dutch Reformed Church for colored people, and colored people were given land, they were given money to build churches, they were given schools. The Afrikaners did a lot for colored people, and black people too. The black people who lived in the cities. There were small amounts of black people living here in Cape Town, in two areas that I can remember. Of course, today there's a humongous black area called Khayelitsha with almost 1 million people, if not more, living there. And they're all from another province. They moved here, obviously politically motivated or motivated by politicians for voting. Um, but over the 30 years, colored people and Indian people climbed economically and built social structures. Of course, today, after 28 years of ANC rule, that is all gone. If you look in the Western Cape, black people are moving in all over into the police. They're taking over. Police is black, traffic cops, teaching profession, the so-called colored schools are now being attended by black students. They come travel from their areas all the way to colored areas. You must understand that even though the race laws have been abolished, things were put in place and grew according to all those apartheid acts, the Job Reservation Act, the Race Relation Act, the Group Areas Act. There was even an Immorality Act where they made it unlawful for people of different races to have relations with one another. I mean, getting married was out of the question. Uh, but it only worked when it came to white people, you know. In my case, for example, I'm Malay and my wife is Indian. We kind of both half Malay and half Indian, but those were two separate race groups. Well, Malay wasn't an actual race group, or at least a recognized race group, but it was a weird system. I mean, India is a country, and white people is a made-up race group. I mean, but okay, let's not go there. The problem with today, and I have a lot of problems with the way things are today, besides the morals which I've spoken about before, the problem that we have in South Africa today is because of the problems that were created by apartheid way back then. And specifically, what I mean is that people abhor apartheid and the race laws, mostly the race laws, not so much what the Afrikaner government did. I mean, everything isn't only bad, just like everything isn't only good. There's good and bad in every single thing. So the 33 years of Nationalist Party rule, which was the Afrikaner political party, the governing party at the time, they did a lot of good things. And even black people will say things like the Afrikaners built civic centers, they built schools, they built roads, they gave jobs to black people. But this ANC government, which is a black government, is not doing anything. They don't build anything. They corrupt. They have been on record more than once as saying that they are not responsible for job creation and they don't create jobs. They actually say that school leavers must become entrepreneurs. In other words, fend for yourself. It's a fancy way of saying fend for yourself because they're not going to create jobs. There are no jobs. Kids are leaving 300, 400,000 every year. Some of them go to university, some of them go to college. Most of them stay at home. They just sit at home. There's no work. And those who go to college and university, they graduate and then there's no work. And they sit at home. It's ridiculous. And it's all part of what creates this negative atmosphere where people feel like no one is in control. No one is doing anything. You can't go anywhere. You can't go to the police station and expect the police to solve a criminal act, a burglary or an assault or robbery, a physical robbery. They're not going to do it. I mean, I have a friend of mine. They broke into his house while him and his family were in the house. They stole a whole lot of stuff from the bottom of his house. He, of course, locked everybody up in the bedrooms. And when they left, he went out and he got his camera surveillance footage because that's the kind of work that he does as a profession. And he even had a camera in the alleyway where they came down, which took video footage of their car and their number plate. And he submitted that to the police. Nothing happened. When he asked them if they had traced the car, no. He was insured, he had household insurance. They did a report and they gave him a case number. And he says that that was the end of it. To them, it was just a matter of, okay, you got a case number, so claim from insurance. But don't expect us to do anything about it. We're not going to go find anybody. We're not here to fight criminals. The police station here by me, like 30 seconds away from me, they put a board up saying this premises is protected by some or other security company. Can you believe that? The police station is protected by a security company. I don't even have that here at my house. My house is not protected by any. I don't have a burglar alarm and those kind of things because I refuse to live like that. I've been living here for 22 years and I've never had a break-in. In fact, I've never had an incident, but it's not like that in other areas. I live in an area where there are no gangs, but all the other areas, most of the other areas where I teach, gang infested. But in any case, that's another topic. I meant to only focus on apartheid, but you know how it is when you get older. Your mind goes from one thought to another thought. But any case, I'll think about it and maybe I'll talk about it again tomorrow. Send me some emails and let me know some comments about what you'd like to hear about. Assalamu alaikum.